to Athletics LLC with Lamar, Lucius, Big League Chew, and my man Clyde. You're about to be schooled in all things track and field. This is experience.
Yes, sir.
We are talking past, present, future. Y'all listen up. Let's go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another fun week of Athletics LLC. This week we've got a great guest. I'm super excited, so everyone else cannot be excited because I'm excited for everyone. But as always, we are joined with Amar Ironic, Lucius,
Good evening, everyone.
Clyde.
The first Ties for Clyde has come through. Special intro. They wanted to remain anonymous. I appreciate it.
Oh, that's awesome. Shout out, Loki, shout out. I love it. And last but definitely not least, my favorite person in the world. It should be everybody else's as well. Miss Tianna Baroletta, how are you today?
I'm well. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming on the show. Big fan.
So, I mean, we all know who you are, and if anybody else doesn't know who you are, I'm just going to go them for you. But tell us who you are. Tell us why we all love you.
That I cannot answer, but I can tell you that I'm a professional track and field athlete who specializes in the 100 and the long jump. I have 3 gold medals, 1 in the long jump, 2 in the 1, on that 4 by record, and 3 championships as well.
Super exciting. So I'm just going to say it out loud. More ironic, you are not the most decorated athlete on this panel this week.
I am not, and I'm actually very proud of that. But she is my spirit animal, and we've discussed this, she and I.
Yes, and Lamar are connected.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and jump in the deep end. Here we go. What do we think are the 3 most important storylines, starting now, going through the Olympics, not related to COVID? So, Miss Tianna, let's start with you first. What, you having the hottest seat in the house right now, what are the 3 most glaring storylines?
With the absence of Christian Coleman because of a suspension, who is going to fill that spot on the sprint court? Who are the female sprinters? Because it is at the same time look wide open. It's an interesting paradox to watch the sprinters. And what happens to these contracts in the year of the pandemic, what moving forward and preparing for an Olympic year, World Championship year, back.
Got it. Gentlemen, chime in. What do we think are the 3 leading into?
I'll take that. I'll jump in that one. For me, and basically a lot of what Tianna said, I would agree with. The men's and women's 100 meters is usually one of the most exciting storylines anyway. And then given the context of who won't be around on the men's side and who could be around on the women's side, both from an American perspective and otherwise, I think that that's an incredible storyline. But honestly, there's no way I could answer this question without addressing the elephant in the room. I think the most compelling storyline about the 2021 Olympics is the American election for president. Because I got to tell you, if Donald Trump is still in office, I don't think the Americans will have an Olympic trials. And I'm just going to say that. The way the pandemic is going, the American election will dictate whether or not we can have an Olympic trials. And that, an Olympics without the American team is a mess.
So I'm going to say that I think the biggest storyline is whether we'll have the Olympics at all. Because of the thing we're not supposed to talk about. I think that the biggest issue for me is how do we ever put the world all in one place? And so I think that at some point in time, there's going to have to be some alternative thoughts and ideas and views on how we have an Olympics, maybe on at different sites, different continents, different places for different disciplines and that kind of thing. I think the selection itself, I'm not going to say the presidential race will determine whether we have a trials, but I do think that it could well determine whether we send a team to the games themselves. I would think that would be a bigger issue. I think that for me, when it comes to the team selection, I think there's some interesting storylines developing because of certain things that have happened with people running times and stuff like that during this, you know, I'm going to call it a rest and recovery period for most. And so I think that as we move forward, the interesting storyline for me will be how people manage coming out of wherever this ends now and wherever we're charged with being a year from now to get ready to prepare for whatever Olympics we may or may not have. So those will be my storylines.
Well, definitely Lucius took one of my storylines. I think that's probably the biggest storyline is the ambiguity as to whether we are actually going to have the Olympics. But I think within the confines of the sport, I think it'll be very interesting to see if the hurdles will get a chance to actually outshine the flat sprints, because I think the storylines are better. And I think it's a forced fit to make the sprint storylines better than the hurdles. But we all know that, especially American TV, we do a lot of forced fits. So it'll be interesting to me to see if that happens. And probably a little bit more of an obscure note, I think it's very interesting that Kevin Meyer, the world record holder in the decathlon, has changed coaches. And I think that's going to be incredibly interesting to see how that goes. I mean, you'd be the first one to score 9,100 and you change coaches. And then I think number 3 is, look, I hate to be messy, but I kind of have to be. I'm very interested to see who we put on the track for the women's 4x1. Just, like, I'm trying to be messy. I'm just saying, to me, that is an incredibly interesting pot, because I find myself to be relatively knowledgeable about the sport. And I would say for me, the relay pool is about 15 people. And I got my money on one specifically. Other than that, everybody else is kind of like, I don't know.
Well, what my question is, why is that a mess? Why is that being messy? That's what you want to see.
Yeah, I just didn't want it to be perceived as such. Like, look, at the end of the day,
there's nothing messy about that. I mean, I think everybody wants to see who's going to be on the track for all the relays.
Yeah,
nothing messy about that, because there's never anything concrete about that process. Even though it's supposed to be concrete, it's never is so. So I think that's a legitimate concern. That's a legitimate question, and one that will be raised a lot of times between now and the time the gun goes off, wherever we end up. So.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously, I mean, we kind of touched on it a little bit, right? I think there's a lot of ambiguity about whether Christian's going to be there or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'll address the elephant or non-elephant in the room, because everybody on the planet now wants Michael Norman on the 4x1. Yeah. So.
I would like to say that some of us were calling for Michael Norman to be a part of the men's 4x1 long before he went to Texas and dropped the 9.8. Just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say.
Some of you were. You definitely. Yeah, I wasn't against him. I'm not saying I was, but you were a big proponent of that for a long time. Yeah.
I think anybody who saw Michael Norman run leadoff in high school probably was on that bandwagon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The only problem now is that you watch what Coleman did last year on leadoff, so now you got some decisions to make. If both of them are eligible for the relay, then you got some decisions to make as to who you run where. So
I don't think you got any decisions to make at all.
Of course you don't, but there's decisions to be made. Trust me, there are.
I mean, I obviously.
Hold on a second. You've been on an Olympic team. Don't start this week. Don't do that. Not today. There's going to be decisions that have to be made, and they will be made at some point in time. But there's a decision to be made. So stop.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And Michael Norman's going to have have to run on some relay somewhere on leadoff to prove that he can do it, which is a joke, but sure.
Well, Miss Greatest of all time Popoff, what do you think about all of this?
I was just about to say, we're talking about Team USA relays. The questions will be asked and the decision will be delayed all the way up until maybe 30 minutes before the call room time. I mean, this is the way our system works. I mean, the relay camps, we don't even know who's on A and B until the day before or the night before. So it's not like it's never going to be clear. So for Lamar, who has been on an Olympic team, to say the decision is clear, that's some BS. I got to call BS on that because
Thank you so much, Tianna.
Thank you.
Because Clyde and I usually have to call BS on him, so we're glad that you're doing that for us.
That you know what? That's fair. And I can take that from her.
Oh, you could take it from Clyde now, but you can take it from her.
This is usually how my world works anyway. It's all right.
Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, you know that was BS when it came out of your mouth, so I don't know what you said.
Sure, that's true.
Look, for everybody's 2 cents that they've got on this show, we can end the change shortage. That's how we're rolling today.
Exactly.
Okay, let's dive into the next question. Would track and field be better or worse off if we had one site for World Championships, one permanent site, I'm sorry, let me make that clear, and one permanent site for the Olympics?
I'm not even, I don't know why that's even a thought. And I know my man Clyde loves a cathedral, okay? And it's a nice facility.
Wait a minute, don't.
No, let me finish. I'm not throwing you under the bus. I'm just saying I know you love the cathedral, but I don't even think you think that the World's Olympics should be there every year. There's something magical about going someplace every 4 years. There's something magical about, you know, the travel, the culture, the things that you can learn. That's a horrible one. I mean, whoever's putting that idea out there, find them, lock them away for a while, and maybe they'll figure it out. But no, that's just terrible. No.
I agree with Lucius. There's a certain level of pageantry that comes with making a team. And it is drastically different when you know you have to stay home. For me, because the Portland World Championships is happening on home court, and I've been doing this at that point for 17 years, that is a different thing. And if it were my first World Championship team and I get to take Southwest Airlines to the World Championships, that is a very different experience. And so it is really important to be able to move around the world. I would be completely uninterested. I would go right to medical school if I knew that every World Championship, every Olympic would be in Eugene, Oregon. And it's beautiful, but that doesn't excite me. I'd rather transcript DNA than that every 2 and 4 years.
I'll jump in there. I'll just say this. Well, first off, that was one of the greatest subtle flexes I've ever seen. Oh, by the way, I'm smart enough to go to med school, just in case you missed that. But I digress. That's why she's my spirit animal. I firmly believe that track and field would be way worse if we always went to the same places. Not even bad. I think it would be way worse. And for a lot of reasons, but I think part of the pride of being a silver fox in the track and field world is you get to talk about all the places that you've been. You know, you get to share. Like, I mean, I've been involved in passport stamp contests. You know, like, and that's kind of dope. You know, like, I've actually been to more countries than I have states, which I'm very proud of. And so, you know, I appreciate why the question was asked. You know, it's a thought, but at least from my perspective, I think one of the greatest parts of being a professional track athlete is the number of places you get to go.
Mm-hmm.
I do not disagree with anything that has been said, and I do not understand anyone who would even consider that World Championships should be at the same place every time or Olympics should be at the same place every time. I've never been on that page. Having said that, some arguments on this topic that I think are related that I have thought were interesting and possibly a good idea. I don't think that the Olympics should be given to third world countries. Sorry, I just don't. I don't think that that's a good idea. I think the chaos that it creates, both in the lead up and the aftermath, are not worth what it costs those countries to put it on. So if an idea came to pass that the Olympics should be on a 3 or 4 location rotation, I could get with that. And for me, Eugene, Oregon is no place to host an Olympics. World Championship, track meet, absolutely. Olympics, God, no. If it's going to be in America, I would say give it to LA. If it's, I would have no problem with LA, London, somewhere else in Europe, maybe a Paris and Tokyo on a 16-year rotation. I got no problem with that. But, you know, the Brazil thing, you know, not from all accounts I heard, you know, it wasn't awesome. And so, you know, I think places like London, places like Los Angeles, even, you know, Atlanta, Barcelona, places that have done it well and that are not in third world countries, I think, you know, we could do something like that. World Championships should continue to operate as they operate, because World Championships is just an athletics thing. It's just a track and field thing. So do your bids, give it to who you give it to. I wish there was less corruption in that process. But even the worry that everybody had about Doha, at the end of the day, Doha was pulled off brilliantly, and it looked amazing, and the performances were spectacular. So, you know, how they got it, I don't know. But, you know, it went off well. So that's as far as I would take it. As far as permanent locations, absolutely not.
Yeah, I think that the whole third world thing, I mean, it was, I understand the thought behind giving them a chance. Gave them a chance, fail. Okay? And just like, I'm good. Let's move on. Trial, error, move on. We're good. And I agree that it needs to be given to places. I mean, we need the pageantry. We need the professionalism. We need the clarity of where things are and how to get to them. It needs to be seamless. It's the Olympic Games. It's the pinnacle of all the sports. So let's not take it and cheapen it by giving it to someone who can't handle the experience. So I think that that's very important, what Clyde said.
I also Clyde, but largely in part because the IOC is about social responsibility. So they say. And so to afford the game to a venue like Rio, and burden them with the financial impact that happens with having a whole country that spends billions of dollars for facilities they cannot use, cannot maintain, and the village where people afford to afterwards is irresponsible and it's actually counter to the very things they stand for. So I agree beyond rotation with countries that can handle it, who have a plan for sustainability. Like London did that really well. But yeah, my heart was breaking in the bus ride from the airport in Rio to the village with the amount of poverty that I was seeing. I was like, how in the world did they win this bid? Like, we should not be here burdened.
No, it was awful. I mean, like you were riding along and you could like literally see straight through people's houses. Like they had no interior walls. Like it was just like you saw the front of like there was a structure, and you looked right through it. And that was their home on the side of a hill. It was awful. It was awful.
Yeah. I definitely think that Australia should be in that rotation. I mean, obviously I have an affinity for that place, but I would also say that they've had the games. I think Australia's had the games 3 times and they've done a great job with them all 3. But yeah, to the Rio point, look, I think that Tianna's point is probably the most poignant one. Winning the Olympic bid seems like a great idea until you look at what the bills are that you get left with. And burdening an already struggling country and continent for the most part with, you know, billions of dollars in debt, it's just insane, right? And they don't have the infrastructure to repurpose things. Like Australia I mean, where we stayed for our village, all of those homes were sold prior to us ever being in them, right? Like it was already repurposed before we ever got there. And so like, that's the kind of infrastructure, that's necessary to take on the Olympics, and it can't be everywhere. But there are certainly a lot of places on this planet that it can be, and can be done very well and safely and not be economically burdensome.
I need to start practicing like my colleagues and taking notes, because Lamar, that was my fourth. It was LA, London, Sydney, and then somewhere else in Europe. I couldn't really decipher between a Paris versus somewhere else, but yeah, LA, London, Sydney.
See, here's the key with the notes thing, Clyde. You're not old enough to have to take notes. I am. Okay. See, I'm smart enough to know that 10 minutes from now I might have forgot that, so I better write it down.
I love it. So before we let you go, Tianna, I wanted to highlight two things that you're involved with directly right now. First being Fibroid Awareness Month, as well as your involvement with Athletes Association. So can you just give us a quick synopsis, your involvement with, and what those two events or those two entities are standing for?
Yeah, so July is Fibroid Awareness Month, and for people not aware, that's the thing that nearly killed me and that I've been suffering with, largely unaware, for the last 2 years. It caused severe anemia, it caused me to hemorrhage, and although the tumor is actually benign, like I said, it could kill you. And once I learned about it, I got connected with the Fibroid Foundation, and so it's just a good time for women, female athletes, people who coach female athletes, people who love, raise, parent, whatever. You have a female athlete, 70% of all women have this condition. A lot of them are asymptomatic, but their uteruses have these tumors. And so it's really important that we all just know about this, because maybe somebody listening who coaches someone who always get ahead of that and not almost die like I did. So that's really important. And this is you'll just hear me blasting and talking about that. The Athletics Association is an attempt at unionizing track and field athletes, professional athletes. It started with us needing to define what it even means to be a professional athlete, but it largely was created by World Athletics making a lot of unilateral decisions that were not made with the athlete's interest in mind. And because they were largely able to say, well, we discussed it with the athletics commission, and there's only a few athletes there, we formed this coalition essentially to be able to bring them receipts about what the athletes face, so-called, talking to, and I don't know, I don't even know the word right now, I can't get it, but the athletes that they are talking with to create this legislation, it's not us. And so that's why the Athletes Association exists, so that we can bring to the table this information. Eventually it will evolve into having elected positions within the World Athletics, but for now it's like just unionizing the voice, because track and field athletes have a very difficult time, because it's very much every man for his or herself out here.
Definitely. And, if you don't follow Tianna already on social media, you'll see highlights of both entities and what's going on right now, specifically in the month of July for Fibroid Awareness. It's great, having clicked on the Athletes Association and see who's on the board and who's being involved. I'd love to see the international piece of it and just the collaboration of everybody. So, definitely it's something that's been long awaited. And I know Lamar has had many conversations about like the need of this, and it's like 30 years past need. So all the best to you guys doing that. And, we love that you're still around and you're healthy as can be right now. And we wish you all the best in your training in the next year. And we know that Clyde's going to do everything in his power to make sure that you're bigger, stronger, better, faster, and longer and long jump for that to happen. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Love it. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Got it. Wow, that was awesome. So gentlemen, I'm going to throw some more questions at you to see if we can get a little more conversation stimulated. Not that that's too hard of a job. What are some of our philosophical differences in between the science of coaching and just the feels of coaching? You know, how do we feel in regards to one versus the other? Is there a one versus the other? Is there not? Where do we stand on that philosophically?
Let the man with the notes run with it.
Go ahead, gentlemen. I've been waiting. I want to learn, so I'm listening. I'm here for the comments on this one.
Well, with your brand new bow tie, I think you should start us off.
I got no problem with that. For me, I think like most things in this world, the truth is in the middle. I absolutely do not agree with anyone who says that science is not a part of what we do in the coaching profession. I think that is patently ridiculous. Our all elements of what we do for living in the world of athletics, whether you're a sprinter, jumper, thrower, hurdler, is guided by physics, and physics is fundamental, and physics doesn't really care about the feel or the thought process of how you get there. So science is fundamental to what we do. However, I've said my entire life in coaching, I've said it on top of stages, I put it in every presentation I've ever given on any coaching subject, that coaching is art. And the science is only useful if it makes the coach a better artist. That's not my quote. That comes from a man named Bill Swedenham, I believe is how you say his name. And so for me, I've always tried in my profession to marriage the science behind what we do for a living with the artistic skills that I have as a coach. And everything that I do is guided by science, but there's a huge feel aspect to what I do. And I am a person who will change a program in an instant if I see something. If I wrote a training for today, if me and Tianna go to the track later and she's in the middle of her warm-up and I know what I have prescribed on the day and I don't like the way the warm-up looks, I don't like the way it's playing out, I'll shut it down, throw it out, and come up with something new because I have to. I think that coaches that are too scared to use their feel for what they do and just stick to numbers and charts and science end up getting a lot of people hurt. And so I think the best people in our profession are a marriage between the science and the field.
The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dispel this rumor that Mike Holloway is totally against science, because that's the biggest bunch of BS on the planet. I am not totally against science. I am not a guy that doesn't believe in science, and I'm not that dumb. So I'm just going to put that out there. But what I'm going to tell you is, Clyde, you use an interesting word. You use the word prescribe. And I think that the problem that I have with the science or some of the scientists is that they want to use science to prescribe, and that's not what science is for, in my opinion. The science is to describe. And then the coaching, the art of coaching, is what should be used to prescribe. So when the scientist tries to tell me how to fix something, and the scientist has never fixed it, I tune out. So then I become a guy that doesn't believe in science. No, I just don't believe that a scientist who has never had fixed such said problems can tell me how to fix that problem. I also have an issue with the scientist that wants to paint everybody into a single box. We can't, the best example ever is, I'll go back to Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson starts jumping out of the blocks like a crazy man, and everybody tries to do it. Then along comes Michael Johnson, and everybody's got to run like Michael Johnson, and everybody's got to run like Usain Bolt. Well, everybody doesn't have their skill set. So I think for me, the key is that using the science to better the person, to better the athlete. You cannot take the science of one athlete and apply it to everyone across the board. That's my problem with the scientists out there, because they want to make everybody look the same. And I'm going to say it, I've said it privately, and I will now say it publicly. I think that science has ruined some of our better athletes because the science that people are trying to teach these athletes are, they're asking them to do something their bodies aren't capable of doing. I think there's a couple of events in this country that were stagnant for a while. I felt like, I still feel this way. There was a time where the 400 was the best event in this country and in the world, as far as being deep. And the more science people apply to the 400, the worse we've got. Pay attention to it.
That's actually really interesting, because, and I've never heard anybody articulate it that way. So my response to that is literally off the top of my head, instinctual. To me, the longer the event gets, the less science it's going to be affiliated with it, because there's so many places for error. There's so many different things that can go wrong. If a stride length issue is crucial to the 100-meter dash, I totally understand that. And it's easy enough to put that in the mix and plan it out in a certain way. But holding a certain stride length dysphoria all the way around 400 meters is a lot different. And I get the general condition of it. I get the prescription of it. I get that you can put it into a computer model and tell you what the computer says, but there's a lot more nuance going on and a lot more things that honestly science hasn't figured out yet. And
well, see, and I'm gonna tell you this: there's nothing to figure out, because okay, here's the problem that I have with the science. You've got an athlete that's 6'4", and you got another one that's 5'9" on a good day.
Right.
So the 5'9" athlete is asked to run down the backstretch of 400 meters the way the 6'4" guy did.
Well, that's not, you
just ruined the guy. So that's my point. Okay, like you can't. That's not right. Like you can't look at what, like say LaShawn Merritt does, and ask the guy that's much shorter than him to do the same thing. Like all of a sudden now everybody's supposed to do what Wade did down the backstretch. No, because he's Wade. And that's my problem with the science of it. See, the science for me is figuring out, okay, my best quarter miler right now is a 45.2 guy. And I have to find what's going to help me make him become a 45 low guy based on what his abilities are, not by going and find out what Wade does or how Wade does, because he's not Wade. Okay?
That's right. Well,
and when you talk about, even when you talk about the 100, the 200, okay, let's talk about the hurdles. The worst thing anybody can do is try to mimic what Aries Merritt does, because you can't do it.
That's right.
Go ahead, put your hand above your head like that, okay? And then try to do what you do with his feet, and you know what you do? You're gonna break your neck, because that's what Aries does.
But see, to me, that goes back to, I don't know, our entire sport, from athletes to coaches to parents, like everybody wants to find the shortcut, right? And so when you see something that looks different than you've ever seen it before, a lot of people, a lot of unintelligent people, in my opinion, say, ooh, I've never seen that before. There must be something to that. We need to figure that out. I mean, that's how the whole 7-step thing blew up. That's how Aries' arm thing blew up. I mean, Penny Harrison and her body structure is totally different than a girl who's trying to be 5'10", 5'9", doing the hurdles. Like, there's nuance here. And I've always said, coach your athlete, not the event. If you try to coach the event, you're going to get yourself into patterns that don't match the kid, and then you have problems. I think every kid, every athlete is a puzzle to be solved on which themselves, and my job is to figure out how their puzzle pieces need to fit, and it's not going to be the same for everybody.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that for me, the way I use the science is to put them in the right positions to succeed. Like I have certain parameters that I use that I think need to happen, but I need to apply that to said athlete, not to said event. And that's where I and the scientists disagree, because some of the scientists out there want everybody to look the absolute same, and it's just not possible. So that is my issue with the science. And I think for me, the art of coaching is more important, Because as you said, you could have something prescribed, but you can look at your athlete and tell it needs to be changed. That's the important part. Because if you lean too heavily on the total science of it, then you're trying to get them to do something that they might not be able to do. And you have to, Tony Wells, the great club coach out of Colorado with the Flyers, used to say this all the time. You have to have great mother wit. Now, unless you're old, you don't know what that means. It's just basically you got to have good instincts. That's all it means. Sometimes you have to just trust your freaking gut.
I'm going to pose this question to my two colleagues here in this realm. I believe that a lot of coaches are horrifically insecure. And therefore, when they are insecure, they lean on what the paper says. They lean on what the book says. They lean on what the computer says because they don't have enough confidence in their ability to be artistic. And so I think a lot of the people that are pure science driven are doing so because of an insecurity. They're not comfortable stepping outside that box. That's my theory on it.
Ironic? Have at it.
Well, I mean, that might be the most perfect alley-oop possible thrown to me.
Yes. That's why I said that was all yours.
I look at it like this. The scientists and the feel artist are both in the same car, but the feel artist is driving and is the only person ever allowed to drive. And the scientist is not allowed to speak until the field artist asks the scientist a specific question. Because at the end of the day, science has limitations, human beings do not. There's a very old story that happened with the clinic that you guys go to at the end of the year with all the sprinters and hurdlers, and they had a stick figure running a 400 hurdle pattern that was perfect, and they had Angelo at the time, who was the best 400 hurdler in the world, and he was running. And at the end, Angelo crossed the line slightly ahead of the stick figure, and everybody sat quiet for a second, and someone raised their hand and asked Ralph, how was it that Angelo was able to beat the stick figure? And Ralph whimsically quipped that obviously the stick figure was tired and Angelo was not. And at the end of the day, that's the truth, is that someone said this to me 2 days ago, that today's standards are tomorrow's mediocrity. Therein lies the limitations of science, because science is only based off of the best thing that man has produced currently.
See, that is phenomenal. And like, if I'm gonna delve too far into science, then I take away my biggest attribute, which is my ability to change on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
Like my ability to hear things, my ability to see things. It's just something that God, that's a blessing I had. And if I go too much on the science of it, then it takes away my biggest attributes, my biggest strengths. Okay. And like, somebody walks up to me and says, well, grant to da-da-da. I'm like, I know that. I just need more time to fix it. I don't need the number. My eyes can see it. I can hear it. But if I start worrying so much about numbers, like I said, the worst thing I can do is try to get Grant to look like any other hurdler. I have to go to Grant's strengths and I have to make them better, and I have to go to his weaknesses and make them his strengths. And that's the only way it's going to work.
But that's why I just want to finish my point. That's why it always amazes me, the people that try to be science first, feel, if any, second, because I think to myself, like, we're not playing a video game, right? There's not a sequence of moves that you put together that's going to produce this thing. Like at the end of the day, like, Grant's trying to run 1260 something. No human being has ever done that, so there is no science or blueprint for it, right? I mean, look, I'm old enough to remember when Ben Johnson ran 979, basically everybody thought that Ben and Charlie had ruined the sport and nobody could ever run that fast clean. And now we all will accept anyone running 978 without any question, because we all know that it is humanly possible because it's been done so many times since. So at the end of the day, like, it has to be a feel first, and it has to be a feel dominant situation to produce greatness, because you have to be several carrots ahead of the mule if you're the coach, right? So if you have someone who can run 12:20 in the women's hurdles, right? You can't wait for the science to tell you how she runs 12:10, because you've seen 12:10 movements in training, right? She didn't run a perfect race to run 12:20. There were mistakes made. So that means for sure you've already seen with your eyes 12:10, 12:0 rhythms, maybe for only 4 steps, maybe for only 2 hurdle segments, but whatever it is, you've already seen it. And you have to be skilled enough to be able to say, as an artist, wait, that was it. Look different, sound different, it may even smell different. But at the end of the day, the skill and the artistry is to be able to recognize that. Say to the athlete immediately, did you feel that? If so, heaven, good for you. If it was felt, then the question is, can you replicate it? How do I get you to replicate it for more times and more segments? But the science is only going to tell you what you got, totally. The science is only going to give you what you got, but the science doesn't see what you saw. And so, you said it earlier, Clyde, and I want to just kind of hammer this point home. I think those that rely on science, simply put, they're screaming as to how good or what the level of coaching that they can be. Because if you are only locked into the limitations of the science, you can only coach athletes within those parameters.
Yes, and
that's my point as well.
And that's
you paint yourself into a box.
And that's why very few people in this world who are coaches are equipped to handle the true unicorns that come along every so often. There ain't a lot of them, but when they come along, if you're not in the right hands as an athlete, they ultimately will be ruined, if not stagnated. But I will say, I think I would be, me personally, I'd be remiss not to point this out, because the rooms that Lamar made reference to, I've sat in those rooms, as we all have, and one of the best parts of the experiences of coming out to Las Vegas and sitting in front of Ralph Mann and the high performance team, who do a phenomenal job at what they do. They are phenomenal at what they do. The best part of that experience for me is to sit in there and do it myself and watch the other coaches argue back and forth with the scientists over what the prescription could be and what the solution is. Because it happens every single year. There's like, this is where we need to get to, but it's your guys' job to figure it out. And that's cool. I enjoy that exchange. I have sat there and argued with the prescribed ideology. We've gone back home and put something on film and sent it in and be like, bro, I told you can't do it this way. It's not going to work. So I enjoy that relationship. I am honored to have an invitation to those rooms, and the exclusive club of people that get to sit in those rooms and have those debates, I think is one of the coolest parts about my job and my career. But the HP team do a phenomenal job, and I think their work is invaluable. I just think that the better coaches know that you take that information that's thrown back at you, and you go learn how to paint better. You go learn how to play jazz. Like, that's the best coaches are the ones that know how to do that.
I'm not as high on the high performance team as you are, because I haven't dealt with them as much. Like I said, I have an ability to figure things out pretty well on my own. And my issue is, again, if the scientist wants to describe something to me, I'm fine with that. But the job that I have with the high performance team is they wanted to then prescribe how to fix it, and they don't know how, in my opinion, because they never have. And it's like my man Ironic said today is, you know, they can tell you, okay, you did this is, they can show you the numbers of what Kevin Young did to run 46.78, but they don't know, because those are just numbers. If you want to know what Kevin did, you better talk to John and you better talk to Kevin, because that's where the true science, that's where the true feel comes in for me. The art of coaching, the art of the athlete receiving the information. So again, not saying I've got something against Ralph Mann, a high performance team. They have a job. I think they do a very good job. I just think that some people just lean on them too heavily because they think it's just like the coach is always calling and asking for the workout, right? You know, there was a post recently where a guy was talking about, and he had an athlete that was running a certain time and wanted to run another time, and then he said to that said athlete, then run that time. No, because the science says you haven't run that time, so you can't train that way. No, and that's my problem with science, because it puts walls up, it puts self-imposed ceilings up, and it paints you into this box or to this circle and tells you you can't do better than this. And then if you want to tell me that this can be done, then I need you to be able to tell me how I can do it, or the information is useless to me. Because like you go to the doctor and he tells you he has a cold, but he has no prescription for it. But what the hell use is he to? Not a very good doctor. You can't cure the common cold, right?
Doc McStuffins, that's who that is. Okay, let's stir the pot a little bit more. Yeah, here we go.
Stirring the pot.
We're stirring the pot because we've got the good, the bad, the ugly effects that the pandemic has had on the NCAA as a whole.
Oh dear.
Yes.
I haven't gone first. I haven't gone first yet, so I guess I will. And I know Clyde is definitely can't wait to get his hands on this one. I think I'm not sure where to start with this one, to be honest with you. I do think that it has exposed some leadership issues, in my opinion, from within the NCAA and even some of the conference levels. I think that the NCAA has kind of been run like our country is being run right now, and that, okay, you run your state, you run your city, that's just not good. You know, the NCAA is the governing body, then we need to govern. We need to tell people what to do. I think that the good that's going to come out of this is that I think that it's going to show people that we've been very wasteful in athletics in this country. You know, the big structures that are irrelevant once you open the doors anyway, they're obsolete because somebody's building something bigger and better that's going to open up a week later. I think that, you know, we have positions and there's a lot of things that are going to come to light here that we just been wasteful that we didn't have to do. I also think that if something good that's come out of it for me is it's giving me time to kind of clear my head, clear space to see where I can get better. You know, where I can help myself get better, help my staff get better, help my team get better. And it's overall what I can do for Florida track and field across the country to make us better as a whole, because I've had time now that my vision's clear now to see some of the stuff that was cluttering up my work, you know. And I think the absolute ugly of this, what's going to happen now, is because of the uncertainty, because of the inability to make decisions, things are going to get ugly, you know, cutting the programs, you know, people's salaries getting cut, people being, you know, furloughed. That's the ugly side of all this right now. I don't know how it's going to get fixed until somebody in a leadership position sits down and says, this is what needs to be done and how. And that's where I am.
I'll jump in there because I know I've got some things to say, but I know Clyde's definitely doing the Birdman hand rub for this one. So I'm gonna get in and get out. I'll just say that I'll go in reverse order because I'm feeling relatively positive today, hence the ironic. I think the ugly side to all of this is we found out that the world of athletics is expendable. And I think that's a harsh reality for all of us because we all live in, make our livelihoods from the world of athletics. But we have found out that this country can and will move forward without us. And that's an ugly thought. Like, I don't think any of us want to live in a world where there's no athletics, but we just have done that for the better part of 3 months. And it's scary to realize that, you know, reruns and already played games are still very popular and people will watch that. They don't necessarily need us to produce new content. The bad side, Lucius spoke to it already. There's a dearth of leadership in every sport. I think that most people in baseball think that Rob Manfred is borderline idiotic. I think that most people in the NCAA have now come to the realization that the NCAA is a collective. It's not a leadership ground at all. I mean, we have schools that are in the same division, in the same level. So your Division I schools that are trying to move fall sports to spring. You have others that are going at, you know, world according to normal. We have others that are deciding whether they are or aren't going to bring kids back. Like, there's like 16 different things that I've seen that schools are doing, which shouldn't be if we're all in one, we're being governed by the same, supposedly, by the same organization. So I think that that's very bad and probably going to get worse if we're going to be honest. Because they just, there's no accountability there. There never has been. And now there's a gigantic bright light shown upon that. And I'll just say that the good has been like, the country's doing a lot better job of not being couch potatoes, myself included. Probably 96 or 97% of the days since March 15th, I've done at least an hour of some sort of exercise. And while that exercise is happening, I'm like, if I sit in my living room, I can watch probably 1,000 people walk by my front window that never walked by my front window before. And they're skateboarding, walking, jogging, all these things. I see lots of couples walking, which never happened before. The grass looks immaculate around everyone's neighborhood. So I think the world itself, just, you know, the marble is probably better off, to be honest. The animals are doing better. What's the word? The ozone is doing much better. And I think we as human beings are probably healthier, as crazy as that sounds. I think those of us who have not been struck directly by the pandemic have realized the importance of being healthy. So that has definitely been the good, in my opinion.
This question, the only appropriate word to describe this overall question is nuance. There's a lot of nuance and layers to every aspect of this question. Good, bad, and ugly is a reaction to where you're sitting amongst this role. So it's hard to answer because there's a lot of insensitivity that can come across given where you happen to be sitting amongst all of this. For me, the things that I've taken away when I see the effects on the pandemic is having and will have on the college sports arena, it's a lot. I mean, I agree with what my colleague said here. It has definitely exposed a lot of things. It's exposed a lot of lack of leadership, and in some cases has exposed who our better leaders are. The NCAA as a whole, I would absolutely agree, is doing everything they can not to be leaders. They're doing everything they can to push away responsibility and push away having to make real decisions so that no one can come back to them and hold them accountable for the decisions that they make. And that is very much how the federal government is handling this issue. So hilarious, but not nearly in the sense of actually being funny, tragically hilarious. I think the ugly parts of all of this are the lives that are ultimately going to be negatively impacted, are the people who have lost their jobs, are the families who's had, food taken off their tables and may never come back because of it. And that is tragic, and that is definitely a very real display of what Lamar pointed out, that we have all learned that the one thing college athletics is not, we are not essential. We may be essential for entertainment, but we are absolutely not essential to the livelihood of America. We make people feel good. We grant a lot of opportunities, and in some cases, I'm a person whose life was ever changed and maybe saved through the scope of athletics and having an opportunity to go through college athletics. But I probably could have and should have taken more of an account of other avenues I could have had if I didn't have that in front of me. And so, for me, with the fact that we aren't essential has pulled the mask off and made a lot of people really uncomfortable. The other thing that I think this pandemic has exposed is, much like Wall Street in 2008, it's not a good idea for certain things to be too big to fail. And football has grown to a place where everybody's treating football like it's too big to fail. And, that's not good. That's not healthy. That does not produce stability for all. That might produce stability for football. Our country, our industry's dependence on the wins and losses, ups or downs, money or no money that comes from football is a bad business model that needs correction. What that correction is, I don't know. No one pays me enough to figure that stuff out. But it's something that absolutely needs to be addressed. And if people don't start to address it, football will ultimately be the poison pill that destroys all of college athletics, because right now it's the thing that's propping everything up, and it doesn't have to be that way, and it shouldn't be the model. So the good of it, I agree. It's given a lot of people time to take a step back, slow down, clear your head, like Lucius said, get your other projects moving. LLC doesn't happen if the pandemic doesn't happen. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things that people are passionate about. There's a lot of things that people have desires to pull off that this has given us the time and opportunity to pursue. I'm going back to school. That probably doesn't happen if I'm in the rips and runs of normal business. So it's giving people time, space, and opportunity to kind of take stock of what their life really looks like and what is essential to them and what is most important to them. Get your priorities in line. Re-educate yourself, connect with your families, connect with your colleagues, grow, learn. Those are the good. And I covered the ugly. The bad of it, like I said, it's just how not essential any of this is. And I hope that we emerge from all of this on a better path, a more righteous path, a path of smarter business practices. This thing has damn sure exposed a lot of waste, not just in our world, but in all world. Zoom has exposed how much money we waste doing unnecessary nonsense.
Amen.
There's a whole lot of businesses in the San Francisco Bay Area that are probably like, do I really need to pay all this rent for this office space? We've clearly been getting our job done without it. Like, and what's to be done with that? Maybe you wouldn't have so much homelessness if you repurpose some of these places for things like that. Like, there's so many angles you could take with all of this. So, I'm definitely not happy about the hundreds of thousands of people's lives who have been snatched by this, and the lack of leadership that has led to so much dystopian destruction. It didn't have to be this way, but it has given people the time, space, and opportunity to think. And for me, the biggest good that's coming out of all of this is the world being put on pause has given the space for everybody to really understand the depths of social injustice and racism. I don't think George Floyd's death murder gets the attention it's been getting if everybody wasn't sitting at home with nothing to do. So I think there's a lot of paying attention that's going on, and a lot of things that needed to come to the forefront have been happening because we had the time to consider things.
I totally agree about the George Floyd situation. If we're at a sense of normalcy in America, there's a day or two of loud noise and then it just goes away like it always does. I hear you when you say that football is maybe too big, but it's to the point now I don't think there's any turning back, because if you turn back on football, then all the minor sports are going to suffer and they're going to go away. So be careful with that wish, please, because I'm a minor sport. And I think so. I don't mind stirring the pot every now and then. So I'm going to pretend I'm the NCAA president. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let everybody know this week, and I'm going to make a big announcement next week. And I'm going to come out middle of next week, and I'm going to say, look, guys, this is how this is going to go. There's only going to be 2 fall sports played this year. We're going to play football. We're going to play basketball. We're going to start football in November and play football from November to February. We're going to start basketball either late December or January. Everybody else is going to get a pause button for a year. That gives everybody a chance to heal, to plan, to get their feet grounded and get started on a path back to some sense of normalcy. And I think that if somebody, and I'm not saying that's the right plan, but if I'm the NCAA president and I put that plan out there, because let's be realistic, if we don't want more jobs lost and programs cut, we need to play football and basketball, okay? So let's find a way to do that, but let's find a way to do it safely. Hopefully there's a vaccine in place by the time those things are about to happen, and then we can move forward. But if you don't do something and everybody's trying to do something different, there's always going to be a problem.
I don't have a problem with the premise of that idea. I think we all agreed that we would appreciate, right or wrong, we would appreciate the NCAA doing their job as a governing body, stepping out, making a decision, and living with the choices that they make. Now, me personally, I don't have an issue with pushing all the fall sports to the spring and figuring out a way to work it out if things get better. I don't have a problem with that. And I totally understand the financial reality of what if football doesn't get played. My problem with the go ahead and play the games is it is the one game that we have that is the absolute most dangerous to play amidst the pandemic. And it's the one sport we have that makes the least amount of sense to try to play in the middle of a pandemic. I think holding our hopes over a vaccine, a normal vaccine protocol is 4 to 5 years. A fast one would be 2.5 years. We're banking on warp speed vaccines. And I got to tell you, if the warp speed vaccine is coming out of America under this leadership, you couldn't pay me to take it.
So look, see, we're not going to do that. We're not going to turn this into a government discussion.
No, but
that wasn't my purpose. I'm not going to.
No, I understand that. But
get off to the left wing somewhere. Look, all I'm saying is this. We'll leave it at this. Somebody needs to make a decision. I just put that out there because, okay, this is not about whether we have this magical vaccine or not. If it's not if it's not safe to play in November, then we don't play in November.
Okay, so that's
all I'm saying. So all I'm saying is, and I said, provided we have structure in place. So all the other stuff out there.
Okay, so wait, that's my question.
That's what this show's about.
But that's my question. So the alternative that I would have to that is, what is wrong with the idea of taking the most dangerous sport, pandemic-wise, football, and pushing that to the spring, and letting the other sports that can function obviously more safely, like a cross country, a soccer, I don't know when they play field hockey, but field hockey, like whatever they are, like what's wrong with letting the smaller sports that can play more.
If you're the NCAA president, then that's your plan. If I'm the NCAA president, my plan is to play football in November sometime, basketball in December or January. That's my plan.
Okay, can I ask you a question about the football?
Yeah.
Right now, I think I'm going to get this right. The Pac-12 and the Big Ten, the money conferences, have decided to play conference-only games. The ACC and the SEC have not made that choice yet, and I have no idea what the Big 12 has said. So are you pro conference-only schedule, or are you pro play them all?
I think in this case, I have no problem with the conference-only schedule because I'm not a proponent of all the weaknesses of the poor getting beat up on to get paid anyway. You know, so that was never, so I'm gonna go play somebody so I can have a better chance of making the playoff. We do not going to start that discussion. You behave yourself. We're not starting that crap today. Please, Lamar, take over this because he's about to get started. We're not doing that today.
The SEC about to play more conference games. They might.
Yeah, we're still the best football conference on.
Anyway, I want to jump in as commissioner for a day, and I will say, for me, I'm moving all fall sports to the spring, and I'm moving all spring sports to the summer. And that buys me time. It buys me time to figure out what is actually going on. It is the least disruptive to the student body because literally we just move everybody back one season, but you can still have the season if it's safe. And that gives me time to, first of all, figure out the protocols for unified bringing back of students to campus, or whether that's not going to happen. But it's going to have to happen the same way everywhere, in my opinion, if we're talking about playing sports. So the first thing from my perspective is to put sports in perspective, which is nobody's playing any damn games in the fall because we don't know enough yet. So I move all fall sports to the spring semester. I move the spring sports to the summer semester, which isn't going to hurt any spring sport except having to deal with Olympic trials type things. That's minutia, and that's easily fixed or dealt with. But at the end of the day, I think if I'm commissioner for a day, that's the first thing I do, which is put the school portion and the human health portion in the forefront, and we deal with that in the fall, and not have not one person ask me whether the SEC should play football or whether the Pac-12 shouldn't, or whatever that is. Like, nah, ain't nobody playing football or soccer or lacrosse or anything else, because I'm not running kids out there as guinea pigs. Like, give me through January to figure out what we can and cannot do so I can make educated and mitigated risk conversations public and be unified. Because the biggest thing I think all of us agree is the NCAA has failed to be unified in any fashion at all.
That's right. And
that's my soapbox. I am now off of it.
No, Lamar, I appreciate that, and that's very well stated. And I want to clarify two things, because everybody accuses me of being the anti-football guy. I'm not anti-football. I'm a football fan. I like football. Played it, coached it for a hot second. I like football. I'm a fan of football. On the football side, I want to shout out the SWAC, my former conference. I want to shout out the SWAC for having the foresight to be the first Division I conference to move to the spring. They did that on its own. I thought that was great. I think it's important. I know it's a small conference and a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to it, but in a moment where everybody's trying to, tiptoe around a leadership decision, I appreciate the SWAC stepping out there and doing that. So props to the SWAC. And I want to be very, very, very clear, because I realized something I said could come off a different way. I am not anti-vaccine. I am pro-vaccine. I am pro-vaccine. Everybody should get their vaccines when they're safe, when it's available. I want to be clear on that.
Heard.
Big league takeover.
And I want to be clear that I do not want people playing if it's not safe. My plan is contingent on there being a vaccine, contingent on it being safe to play. The biggest thing is from where I sit, if I'm the commissioner, if I'm the leader, is that I know that's what everybody wants to do. right? Everybody wants to play football and they want to play basketball. So I'm going to give you those caveats provided it's safe to do so. And that gives us more time to prepare. It gives us more time to, as Lamar said, get more information and figure out if it's safe to do. My reason for not playing the other sports is because at some point in time, this is going to get clustered and it's just going to be too much going on. So somebody's going to have to, I'm not so sure we run indoor track this year.
That point, to that point, I was going to ask you guys that, Lucius, after you gave your hypothetical shift. Regardless of if a shift like that happens or not, I think our sport is governed. We have 3 segments to it. Obviously, we have cross, indoor, and outdoor. I'm of the opinion that it's highly likely that we don't have an indoor track season at all. I think outdoor is, doable, and I think cross is doable, but I'm not sure if they're prepared to do cross in the fall. So would you move cross to the spring and say January, February, we're doing cross, skip indoor, and then roll into outdoor? Or
I think
you try to squeeze them all in?
If you started cross country in January and ended it in mid-March, and then started outdoor track at the end of March, which is typically when most people start anyway. Or if you had cross country start the first weekend in January and then the first weekend in March, and you tell nobody you can't run any outdoor track at least until the week after the NCAA cross country was over. At least you got 7 days where you can do anything. Now you're gonna have some distance coaches. Oh, that's not fair. Those are the same guys that run up to Boston and qualify in the 5K right after the cross country season, right? The same people. So they're going to go do that. So they'll just go wherever they're going to go and get qualified for the 5 and the 10 for the NCAA. So I totally agree. If you're trying it from a safety standpoint, absolutely, you run cross country in the winter. You started in January or so, and you don't do indoor, and you come back and do outdoors.
I literally think that's a common sense approach to this.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's
how do we run
problem.
cross country in January to March? In the Midwest, that's snow season.
Say again?
In January through March, we're still in snow in the Midwest. So
They run outside. They know the deal.
Yeah.
Okay. I had to throw it out there.
I mean, I think I've seen.
Let's be realistic, okay? So I've said this in some meetings, and people think I'm being a jerk. If you want to get better at anything, you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? There's a pandemic going on. It's killing people. Yeah. So then your choice is, if you don't want to be cold and maybe have to travel just a little bit to the south during that time of year to run your cross-country meets, then let's just not have a cross-country season.
Facts.
It's just that simple. Okay,
and so everybody who would complain about, my team.
So let's figure out a way, instead of saying, oh my God, it's not fair, so-and-so doesn't have 2 feet of snow today. Well, if it's indoor track season, you have 2 feet of snow when you go out for your long run. You ain't doing your long run inside. Yeah? And if you're doing your long run on an Ultra G during that time of year, then still do it on the Ultra G. If those who want to get it done will find a way. But if we're talking about the safety of these student athletes, we have to move stuff to places where it's safe and we have time. I don't think anybody feels comfortable with a football game starting 6 weeks from now.
And that's my whole point about moving all the fall sports to the spring, because look, the kids who get most exploited right now are the football players already, right? The most money is made off of their backs. So why should they also be the guinea pigs? There should be no sports played in the fall. And football players are not expendable just because their universities depend on them to play. That's, excuse my language, bullshit. Nobody's child should be an experiment for a university that has not been fiduciarily sound, so they need to play football. Move the football and all sports seasons into the spring. Move the spring sports into the summer, and that is the only safe theoretically, because it's still theoretically, that is only safe option that's available. But this thought process that, you know, the magic wand is going to be waved and football's just going to be okay is insane.
If I could stand up on camera and applaud Lamar, I would, but then I would be out of frame. So I'm going to give you a sitting round of applause for that, sir, while also pointing out, this is episode, 15 of LLC, Chew?
16.
I would like the audience to go back and watch episode 1 and realize that Lamar has come around 16 weeks later to Clyde's point of view on football and the fall.
Okay, I'm gonna defend Lamar because I don't think Lamar ever said that it was safe to play football back then.
He said that.
Hold on a second. He just believed that they would.
Okay.
I still do. That's
exactly. So for the record, and we can go back, as you say, check the tape. And if the tape is checked and it appears that Lamar and I were saying that it would be okay to play football or safe to play football, I don't think either one of us ever felt that. I know I didn't. I know he didn't either. But because of the country that we live in, okay, there's still the possibility that in 6 weeks there's going to be a football. There's a possibility. So before you stand up and start clapping, you wait for 6 weeks. Or 7 or 8. Because I'm not saying. Look, understand this. We are both on the same side with you and have been from day one.
No doubt.
Safety is first. But see, because we're a little longer in the tooth than you are, okay, we know how this crap works. Right. At the end of the day, okay, look, this country is open now because of money. Yeah. Okay? And if you don't think there's somebody somewhere doing everything they can to ensure that if nothing else, the Autonomy 5 plays football this fall. Okay? Just you know.
We know that.
You don't have to stand up and clap because we've been on your side on that the whole time. We've been just trying to let you know that this is a decision that is way above our pay grades, and there's somebody out there that wants to play football in 6 weeks.
But I do appreciate the sitting ovation.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a standing ovation because that was very well said. You know, because you didn't have a jar tonight. You know, I think you did okay. I mean, look, you said you couldn't have a jar and a U-shirt on at the same time. That would have been bad.
I mean, that would have actually been ironic.
I'm gonna say
exactly. That's my point. That would have been very ironic.
I mean, for the record, the fact that I'm wearing this shirt is ironic. But
yeah, well, see, like so, Clyde.
Yes,
so
sir.
If I ever gave you the impression that I thought it was going to be safe to play football this fall, shame on me.
No.
Shame on me.
That's not what I was saying.
Right. Okay. I just want to make sure because we have always been on your side on that.
No, not on that. What I was saying was my original stance on all of this is that one, yes, it would be irresponsible, but I have always maintained that at some point, enough people would realize how irresponsible it is, and business as usual for fall football was never going to happen. And on that, I've already been proven right with 2 of the Power 5 saying, actually, we're not doing business as usual. We're going conference only, and that's just to buy time to give us.
I don't know about the business as usual term because I don't. All I know is I was like they're going to play football. I remember saying that.
Well, they're already playing less football in some D1 conferences.
Exactly, but that wasn't part of the conversation. And look, I hope you're right. I hope we find a way to make this right without putting these young people in jeopardy. I can tell you because I've gotten some of the information, the protocols that they are putting forth to try to play football. Look, they're trying to play.
Oh, absolutely. We know.
I'm like very like, and here's the thing: the money that it's going to cost to play football is interesting. But again, I'm just telling you. If you're not the commissioner, ironic. So it's not.
This is one of those things that has happened that the general public doesn't understand. That the autonomous five are so hell-bent on playing football because they need to get the TV dollars, which I get, but they're so hell-bent on playing football that they are causing damage to non-Power 5 schools that is completely unintended, and the rest of the public doesn't get this. All of those games that have now been eliminated as non-conference games, those are institution-saving games for those smaller schools.
Yeah.
And so what is now happening is you're asking a young man who plays football at the University of Florida, he used to be not only putting money in Florida's pocket, but he was also putting money in South Florida's pocket, because South Florida was getting $1 million to get curb stomped by the University of Florida in an off week. But now that those games aren't happening, that's $1 million that is not going to be in the University of South Florida. I'm making this up, people. Don't at me. It's $1 million that will not be in the University of South Florida's coffers. And I know for a fact that there's a school that was affected by the Big Ten's decision that lost a $600,000 guarantee that they had already spent. So now there's a $600,000 shortfall at that school, which is going to mean that some program is going to get cut and some people are going to lose their jobs.
Yes.
And to Clyde's original point, football has gotten to the point where it can't fail at the autonomous fives, and it has taken a whole lot of other things down with it. And that's unfortunate. That is really unfortunate. We've allowed anything in collegiate athletics to grow to that point.
It is, and that's why I use the 2008 housing bubble example, because that is exactly what this is.
And it's a great example, but unfortunately, guys, it's not changing.
Oh, it's going to happen. Look, I'm going to say this.
Look, you have to understand, look at it like from a mob perspective, okay? If you're in the mob, you protect your biggest moneymaker, right? That's the biggest moneymaker. It's going to be protected. It's going to be fought for. It's going to be played at a high level at some point. Mm-hmm. And I'm not voting for 6 weeks, so don't say Mouse said play football in 6 weeks. I didn't say that. Okay? I'm just saying that the people, the powers that be, wanted to happen. And we'll just leave it at that for today.
I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yep.
Well, let's go ahead and close that section out. Let's wrap up the show today with our heartbeat pops. If you didn't tune in last week, we installed a little segment where we want to give, as it was graciously said, our roses to those who deserve them while they're still around. So that sounded insensitive. While they're still here with us, my apologies. That was horrible. So Lamar, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
It's my honor. My heartbeat props goes to a gentleman who's unfortunately been in the news here lately, not of his doing, but George Williams is an incredible human being, and I think we all would agree to that. But what George probably doesn't even know is, from my perspective, like, he's the first person that ever made me believe that I was doing the right thing by being a coach, and made me believe that it was a good thing that I was doing it. But I think beyond all that, he's the first person that actually helped me achieve buy-in from student athletes, and honestly, probably before I deserved it. George has been at St. Aug forever, and my first collegiate coaching job was at Wake Forest, and we share a state, obviously, and we were at one of the first meets I was ever at with my team, my group of athletes, and George kind of like sat my kids down and told them, like, hey, do you know who you're blessed enough to have as your coach? You need to listen to him, and if you do, your life will be better, and said all these wonderful, glowing things that I thought, man, I should be coached by that guy. And look, George has been an inspiration to me from afar and from near more than half of my life. Like, I remember being in high school, like, George has made St. Aug such a big deal that I remember being in high school thinking, man, I really will have reached it if I get good enough that I could be recruited by St. Aug. Like, I didn't even know that St. Aug was a Division II school, because everybody I knew that went there, like, they were like I saw them in track and field news, right? So, like, if you were a stud athlete, you went to St. Aug. Like, that happened. And so, like, I remember thinking to myself vividly, like, it would be awesome if I was good enough in high school to be recruited by St. Aug. So, props and love to my man, George Williams.
For me, my person this week will probably be someone that a lot of people in our community, track and field athletics, probably won't know. And that is my club coach, Alonzo Carter, or as he would call himself, and righteously so, the real Coach Carter. Alonzo Carter is currently the running backs coach at San Jose State University here in the Bay Area. But when I first met Zoe, he was the football coach at McClymonds High School and also ran what we call the AC Track Club, which was the Alameda Contra Costa County Track Club. And if you are a fan of club track, you go look at the run that we had in the late 90s with the AC Track Club. We reset records. We demolished people all across the country, and that was Zoe's project and brainchild. I grew up in the Bay. My mother's moved 30 times in her life. I'm turning 40 next year, okay? So we lived in a lot of different areas of the Bay, but I mostly grew up in and around Richmond, California, and Zoe is from West Oakland. Zoe is a former MC Hammer dancer when Hammer was running the globe, okay, who decided to get into coaching after that whole thing was over. And Alonzo Carter put more kids into Division I during his time at McClymonds High School than the infamous De La Salle High School did, okay? Zoe is a legend in the Bay, and what makes Zoe so important is the fact that he always cared about the school part of it first. The only reason I was able to get a full scholarship to UCLA out of high school is because Zoe got a hold of my transcript after my 10th grade year and looked at it and was like, dude, none of these classes that you're taking are gonna get you eligible for college. I'm like, Coach, I got my GPA. He's like, I don't give a damn about your GPA. You in the wrong classes. None of this is 48H compliable. None of this is UC system compliable. These people are leading you astray. And so at the end of the day, I ended up leaving my mother's home, moving to Oakland, California, living in this man's house. Like, we did everything he needed to do for me to make sure that my grades were straight and that I was able to capitalize on my talent. And he did that for so many kids. And he saved a lot of lives and gave people a lot of opportunities that they wouldn't have otherwise. And it's amazing that just now, because of the pandemic, because of freaking Zoom calls, that he is just now getting the attention and respect that he deserves. He's been featured on ESPN multiple times in the last couple of weeks through a Black coaches Zoom meeting that he originally set up on a much smaller scale, but exactly the same way that you set up the coaches collab. It's just, it's football. So a lot of people are paying a lot of attention to that. He's got a documentary coming out on him shortly that's being promoted into the Sundance Film Festival that I was lucky enough to get interviewed for, and I owe that man everything. So Zoe, the real Coach Carter, Alonzo Carter, San Jose State, I love you, and I appreciate
you. Good job. My heartbeat props I'm going to give up to a man that just absolutely changed my life and is still a great part of my life today. He was my high school sprint coach, Ed Snow. Ed is he's my coach, he's my mentor, my dad. He's just been there. I go back to my junior year in high school, and the head coach says, "Hey, we got a new sprint coach, and he's going to work with you guys, and he wants you to work out with him." So, we walk in and there's this skinny white guy. He's got this really long hair, and we're inside. He's got shades on. And he looks at us and he says, "If you guys can keep up with me, you're fast." Like, whoa. So, we'll take the challenge. 45 minutes later, we've all been whipped. And that was just the beginning of the many lessons he's taught me in life. I can't think of an important moment in my life since that day that he hasn't been there for me. Much like Clyde talked about, he taught me the importance of education. I didn't catch on as quickly as he wanted me to, but I did catch on. And I just want to thank Ed for always being there for me and helping me become the man that I am. And I hope that I've made him proud along the way. So thank you so much, Ed Snow.
That's awesome. Mine this week is, and I'm sure almost every jumps coach has this thought, if not said it out loud as well, is Jeremy Fisher. Having attended level 2 with him, he made me fall in love with jumps specifically, but even just coaching even more than I thought I was already. I thought I was in love and infatuated with what I was. He made me love it. I've done a horrible self-admission job of being a mentee and contacting and keeping in contact with. But what makes him stand out so much is when we do have the opportunity to reconnect, it's genuine, and it's a connection of us not skipping a beat. And whether that's organic to us, I don't know. I have no clue, but I have a feeling he's like that with everyone, because he genuinely cares about everyone. And that's something that I strive to be within myself as I coach going forward. And having the opportunity to teach a level 2 jumps here next week, I hope to have that same impact that he has on me. And so for that, I appreciate everything that he does for the sport, as well as what he's done for me just as a coach and developing into who I am. So thank you very much, sir. But with that, now we're all on our heels and we feel better about everything. As always, great show, gentlemen. Thank you so much. I do have to give a special shout out to Grace McKenzie of McKinney State. If you're watching, give me a little smile and I'll see it. But other than that, gentlemen, have a great day. Have a great evening. We'll see each other soon, and with more topics to share and earth-shattering comments and our own 2 cents to contribute to this change shortage in the world. Have a great day.
Shout out to my man, Rob Jarvis.
Good day.
Later.
When the lights come on, the road just get to running. When the lights come on, opponents smash the plumbing. Heard you like it warm, hot, knife the butter. Truth pin them hard, knock them off that rebuttal. Tsunami, tidal wave to your puddle. Tough love, punch you in the arms, little brothers. Athletics LLC, there's no others. Track and field's place to appeal to go further. Hey, Wally, Coyote, it's road runners. Feels like you know us, you've been with us the whole summer. If not for this quarantine, these 4 corners wouldn't be here, but we here, so start learning. You gotta earn your stripes, gotta get your scars. Show you how to fight, but show us who you are. You lack experience, but still you wanna talk. And who is actually talking to you? Circle's kinda small. Heads prevail when the backbone's strong. Gotta keep it coming, no, it won't last long. Pass and fail, then sell the sad song. And if you don't check yourself, then that's wrong. Just trying to give you the real that you asked for. So why you keep cutting us off to ask more? We put it in slow-mo, but you fast forward. Athletics LLC, the task force.